Good morning. Welcome you on this blustery November day. As you know, some of you know that I teach courses in religion, and the new course this year is an introduction to Islam. Where are my Islam students? Anybody out here? It's a small group of seniors and elective, but I have an endless fascination with world religions. Not enough time to study them all. But this morning's guest speaker is Dr. Timur Yuskaev. He's an assistant professor of contemporary Islam, co-editor of the Muslim World Journal, co-director of Islamic chaplaincy program at Hartford Seminary. His upcoming book, Speaking Quran, The Emergence of an American Sacred Text, examines contemporary written and oral interpretations of the Quran. This project highlights his academic interest in religion as a lived reality, past and current, which he approaches through the lens of Quranic hermeneutics, American religious history, and memory studies. In his past professional life and in between degrees and teaching assignments, Dr. Yuskaev served as coordinator of educational programs and director of Muslims in New York City Civic Life Project at the Interfaith Center of New York. Dr. Yuskaev holds degrees from Bard College, a master's from the University of Colorado at Boulder, and a PhD from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So he's from St. Petersburg, Russia. So let us warmly welcome Dr. Timur Yuskaev.
All right, good morning. Thank you for your warm welcome. All right, so if I were to give a title to my short talk today, it would be something like this: The Muslim President and the Politics of Love. And the reason why I wrote it down is because of the quotes around the Muslim president. And just to dive right into it, let me play an excerpt from, this is President Barack Obama at the L. Smith dinner in 2012. If you do not know what the L. Smith dinners are, look them up. They're interesting. So it's him and Mitt Romney in the same room. The rules of the game for that particular evening is that there should be no politics. It should be all jokes, being friends, getting along. So I will play two jokes that he made, very, very short. What I really want you to concentrate is the second one. But the first one is kind of interesting just to see how he delivers it, and then see how he delivers the difference between the delivery of the two jokes. Okay.
Of course, the economy is on everybody's minds. The unemployment rate is at its lowest level since I took office. I don't have a joke here. I just thought it would be useful to remind everybody that the unemployment rate is at the lowest it's been since I took office. And we're getting to that time when folks are making up their minds.
Okay, three
Just the other day, Honey Boo Boo endorsed me. So that's a big relief. Ultimately, though, tonight's not about the disagreements Governor Romney and I may have. It's what we have in common, beginning with our unusual names. Actually, Mitt is his middle name. I wish I could use my middle name.
All right. So it's funny. Now the question is why, right? Why is it funny? Also, the reason I played a little bit before was to show, if you pay attention to it, there is a difference in the delivery of the jokes. The last joke you heard about Barack Obama's middle name, he did not chuckle. His face was very serious. I'm not going to play it again, but if you want to see that for your own kind of viewing pleasure. Just see how he delivers it. There is a sense that he delivers this joke, everybody's laughing, and his face is just stone cold, right? It is an interesting kind of moment. Now, why am I bringing it up? Let me work in kind of an additional light introduction about who I am, what I do. So I am at Harvard Seminary, and I teach contemporary Islam. Among other subjects, I teach about American Muslims. I also train, together with my colleagues, people who are becoming leaders in the Muslim community in the United States, who take on the profession of serving as chaplains, chaplains at universities, in the military, in the prison system, in hospitals, and so forth and so on, right? One of the challenges that my students face is being seen as a problematic minority, right? And what you may have heard in Obama's joke is a reflection, an echo of a discourse that places Muslims presents Muslims as a problematic minority. Because what is it about Obama's name that is most problematic? I mean, one can argue his first, middle, and last name, they all are problematic, right? People who are calling, birthers and such, who are constantly reminding their own audiences that this president, in their narrative, is not legitimate. The crust of their argument is that he is not legitimate because somehow he does not belong. And why does he not belong? Because, so the mythology of that particular line goes, because he is a foreigner literally, because he was born elsewhere. And if he is not a foreigner literally, then he was born in Hawaii, and what is Hawaii? And if it is not that, then, and the unspoken reality of it is, he is black. And the additional side to it, so there is race politics, right? He does not belong because he's black, and then there is another side of it. And another side is reflected in Obama's joke. It is also, in more serious moments of his presidency, was reflected during his inauguration, the first one and the second one. During the first inauguration, when he was presented as Barack Hussein Obama. Second time, he was called Barack H. Obama. Out of his three names, the middle one disappeared. It is as though it is kind of he whose name must not be uttered. It's like Harry Potter type of stuff, all right? Ooh, do not mention Hussein. Out of his three names, it is the Hussein that is most problematic, and that is why. I mean, to me, that highlights the Muslim component of his name, and that's where the Muslim president. There was recently a rally in front of the White House during the whole government shutdown campaign, where one of the speakers urged the president to just pack up his bags and leave the White House because he does not belong. And the line that that speaker gave was, pack up, leave, put down your Quran, and leave. So in that particular quote, there was this perception that somehow his not belonging, somehow that related to the perception, that conspiracy theory, that he is a secret Muslim, right? No matter how much he eats pork in public, no matter how much he drinks beer in public, no matter how much he attends church in public, there is this perception that somehow he does not belong. Now, all of that, those are just, ignorant people who do not know. My perception and my study of people who are Muslim in the United States, I think, suggests that it is a reflection of a much broader discourse. And I would suggest that post 9/11 specifically, Muslims have emerged as America's new problematic minority, right? So there is a problem that somehow is identified around Muslims. One of the best books that has been written about the reality of being Muslim, living as a Muslim in the United States post 9/11, is written by a good friend of mine. His name is Mustafa Bayoumi, and it goes, how does it feel to be a problem being young and Arab in America? It's interesting, Mustafa, the title for the book, he takes from the opening of W.E.B. Du Bois's The Souls of Black Folk, like the very opening paragraph, and where Du Bois basically says, between him and the people that he encounters, there's always an unasked and unanswered question. People keep wanting to ask him, how does it feel to be a problem, right? So that highlights that the notion of problematic minority is not new. Muslims are just the latest problematic minority, and there are other problematic minorities in the US now, one can argue. And in the previous eras, African Americans have been probably the longest serving problematic minority in the United States. Talking specifically about religious minorities, Catholics, for about a century, from about the middle of the 19th century until after World War II, were a problematic minority. Now, what does it mean to be a problematic minority? It does not necessarily mean that there is a problem with that minority. What it means is that they're singled out for national conversations, broader discourses that reflect on the nature of who we are. And who we are is often presented by who we are not. So throughout much of the 19th and 20th century, many public intellectuals in the United States would present America, the idea of America, as not being Catholic. And what does it mean? The heritage of Reformation, the heritage of Enlightenment, the whole idea of progress. This is a nation that moves along with the progress, in fact, leads the progress. The echoes of that long-standing debate were just recently exhibited by Barack Hussein Obama, where he was calling on the nation to endorse his idea of bombing Syria, and how he presented that idea, what is the right that the US has to bomb another country, and the central line that he gave was, America is exceptional, right? That notion of America as an exceptional place, exceptional nation, goes back, and throughout the 19th and 20th century, very often it was presented as an opposition to other not so exceptional places, which are still mired in tradition, which are still opposed to modernity, and many of those places and many of those thinkers were presented as, well, they're Catholics. They have not reformed. They have not gone through the Enlightenment like we have, right? So until recently, Catholics were that. And post 9/11, I would suggest that Muslims are seen often as a problematic minority. Now, what is really problematic about Muslims? There are symptoms of that discourses constantly bring up, the symptoms of the problem, right? And one can dispute those symptoms all the time, anytime. So like when I give speeches like this in front of audiences, one of the questions that constantly comes up is why Muslims have not condemned acts of terrorism, and yes, they have, many, many, many times, right? If you want to know how they have done it, there are many places online where you can see documentation of that. One of them was, there's a professor at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, Juan Cole, who has assembled those statements, and there are many others, right? And I can tell you personal stories about that, but I don't have time. So there are symptoms, right? So one of the symptoms that is presented is that, hey, they somehow do not condemn terrorism. Even if they do not carry out terrorism, they do not condemn terrorism. And it's easily disputed. Muslim organizations throughout the world have condemned repeatedly acts of terrorism and declared this is not who we are. We do not do that type of stuff. It's an aberration. It's radicals and so forth and so on. I would suggest that there is something probably deeper about the sense of particularly a religious minority, such as Catholics or Muslims, being singled out as a problematic minority. And that deeper level, I think, has to do with the modern notion of how do we operate in the modern world, in contemporary world. If you analyze it constantly, we are forced to create binaries. We know something is this because it is not that, right? Modern, not traditional. Rational, irrational. Rational, reasonable. Irrational, traditional, therefore religious. I think the specific kind of problem with religious minorities that are singled out as problematic is the religious component of it, which is often not articulated. Because religion is often perceived and presented, when it is especially religion of other people, as irrational, right? If they carry out violence, it is irrational. It makes no sense. If we carry out violence, it is rational. We can rationalize it. It is absolutely reasonable. Even if there are exceptions to how we carry out that violence, there are still reasons behind it which make sense to us, right? So I think the particular issue with Muslims today being a problematic minority is them being religious. And I think, to be honest with you, the answer that many religious groups, Muslims are just one among many, the answers that they give every day in their life to that problem of being a religious minority, I think those answers often go unnoticed, but precisely in the fact that they go unnoticed, that's where their power lies. Let me give you an example, and then I'll follow with another example. Very short example is back in the spring of this year, I was at a conference in Washington, D.C., and that was about the same time that the Boston Marathon bombing took place. A horrific incident. So in the morning, I picked up a local newspaper, Washington Post. The front page of Washington Post showed a giant picture of people in Boston celebrating the capture of the second bomber, the younger of the two brothers. So that was the national conversation of the day, right? The fear has been alleviated. On the front page of the metro section of the Washington Post, so like for the local consumption, there was another ginormous picture. And that was a picture of it was kind of looking from a window, and you see a lady walking in the street. The lady wears a headscarf and is all clad in purple. That's what she wears every day. And that lady is Asma Hanif. And the front page story in the metro section was about a lady called Asma Hanif who runs a shelter for victims of domestic violence. And she herself is Muslim. The shelter is primarily for Muslim women. And that's her day-to-day work of helping out people, right? So what makes headlines? What makes headlines are these acts of aberration, horrible incidents like the Boston bombing. But the other headlines, and that day, thank God, there was the headline about Asma Hanif. But most of the time, things like this do not make the headlines. And things like this highlight the kind of ethics, the kind of everyday discipline that people who are religious often live, where they transform the society around them, and while they're transforming themselves. And why do they do that? Now let me bring up, this is the final example, I'm going to leave it at that. And that's, again, if I were to give a title to what I was about, to what I'm saying, it would be The Muslim President and the Politics of Love. There was a letter that a prominent imam, a Muslim religious leader, sent to his community. And what he meant by his community is immediately his community, but also community of his city, The gentleman's name is Imam Suhaib Webb. It's at the very bottom. He's the Imam of the Islamic Society of Boston Cultural Center. The document was called Letter of Love to Boston Community. It's a wonderful little document. It's written in a way that's extremely accessible, and but at the same time, there is a lot of theology in it. And I think, if you read it closely, the central theme in this letter is the theme of fear and security. So he's addressing a community that immediately after the bombing in Boston was affected by the bombing because these people are from Boston. They're Bostonians, right? But also at the same time, they felt that this was about this kind of yet another wave of misapprehension and perhaps violence directed at Muslims just may happen. And so Imam Suhaib Webb writes a letter of love to them. What it highlights is the kind of particular politics that many religious groups carry out. Politics not in kind of the immediate sense of politicking, but politics in a way of transforming themselves and society in relationship with other people. The weapon of choice, so to say, the instrument of choice, better to say, is the everyday ethics of living godly life. And to this person and many other communities, that is the politics of love within the community and politics of love outside the community. One of the ways in which it translates beyond this letter into the reality of many religious organizations in the U.S., Muslim and non-Muslims, is in the increased acceptance and almost kind of common sense of feeling that interfaith engagement is normal. We do that. We do it as a matter of everyday life. Many religious communities do that. There is in the latest survey of mosques in the United States, one can see that about 90%, actually more than 90% of mosques in the United States have reported that they engage in interfaith activities. That's politics of love. Let me finish with this. I know that, let me finish with this. What is central to interfaith? What is central to politics of love, whether it's within the faith or outside of the faith? I think the central component of it is the cultivation of the ethics of humility. Because to engage in interfaith cooperation, work with other people in interfaith exchange, one has to suspend their instinct at exclusivity, at being arrogant, and really cultivate humility. So that's the central component of politics of love, humility. And just to get back to the joke that Obama made. Once again, I don't know if the way he presents it is so distinct from the way that the audience reacts. And it is perfectly fine that the audience reacts with this way, because what they're expressing is kind of the unspoken discomfort with a problematic minority. It is an instinctual reaction, right? But what if this instinct has been cultivated or countered with another instinct, an instinct of humility and respectful kind of suspension of judgment? Well, that would make Obama's joke really poor because nobody would laugh. It may be a good thing. All right, thank you so much.